It is a name. You hear the Rockefellers, you're like, I can just wipe that off as conspiracy. He's talking about the Rockefellers again. But if you look at this, it's like, no. This is there's a long history here of how this has actually shaped what modern medicine looks like.
100%. And and now today, Bill Gates, as you said, like, it's just like these names, you bring these names up, it sounds conspiratorial. And I think there's kind of this the media is now the protector of the status quo and corporate interests, and they'll slam you as being conspiratorial for bringing up Rockefeller or Bill Gates today. I would just ask, just high level, and let's get into Rockefeller, is like, are things going well right now? Like, I look around and I'm seeing, and gut check me if I'm wrong, I'm seeing really worrying signs. 80% of American adults obese or overweight. 22% of kids having fatty liver disease. As I said, a third of I just can't get my head around that. A third of teenagers have prediabetes, and 40% of high school seniors have a mental health disorder. So like, there's something not working with, I think, healthcare system, and then food, which inevitably leads to the health. So I think you've got to trace the incentive structure. I mean, these are really large industries, and I think a lot of it does trace to John D. Rockefeller. So let's just give a little history here. The wealth of John Rockefeller is hard to comprehend. So if you do you tie it to today's dollar, he was basically a trillionaire. And by far the richest person who's ever lived. And yes, he had far outside of oil. So he actually invented the U.S. pharmaceutical industry. So a lot of the byproducts of oil, and in the 1900s, right, medicine was really quackery, to be quite honest, right? Bayer actually invented cocaine. So cocaine, and heroin, they sold both of them. Heroin was a word patented by Bayer, in heroic. And you wouldn't believe this, but it was one of the top 5 in 1900, one of the top 5 selling drugs in the country. For what condition? For infants acting up. Heroin was given. No, it worked. It actually worked. So
I bet it did. I bet it worked like nothing else.
So every baby in the country, in 1900, was given a little drop of heroin, patented by Bayer, and they ended up, kind of like being a little less. So it actually worked. And then a cocaine, for many different uses, was also one of the top 10 drugs in the country. So we've really come full. So it's a little bit of the Wild West. And in the early 1900s, John D. Rockefeller realized you could kind of put a professional label on this, and he could use some of his byproducts to sell more serious medications. So he actually funded the initial med school. So John D. Rockefeller was the major funder to Johns Hopkins, which basically created the modern American medical system. I talked about my sister who went through residency. So residency was created by John D. Halstead, which was a Rockefeller protege at Johns Hopkins. So Dr. Halstead created this idea where it's like you're working for 40 hours straight and you're not asking questions. You're heroic. He invented this thing called the radical mastectomy for breast cancer, taking out the whole breast. It was cut. It was surgery is serious medicine. It's don't ask questions. And that patient, they come here, you don't talk to them, they're passed out before you, and you're heroic, you're cutting that serious medicine. It turned out his practices, the radical mastectomy, and a lot of the things he pioneered were totally wrong. But his macho, like serious medicine is surgery, that has stayed on. And his residency, where you basically brainwash, and I think it's literally brainwashing budding doctors, complete purposeful sleep deprivation, working 40 hours. It turned out that Dr. Halstead was taking the morphine and the cocaine that they were giving patients, had a terrible lifelong drug addiction. And after doing these like 4-day spurts of constant surgical interventions, which are still kind of the norm today in residency, he would have manic breakdowns and have to take 6 months off, and was literally losing his mind and going crazy. But that type of mantra actually embedded itself, and it was very purposeful. This idea that nutrition and anything holistic and talking about exercise, think about that. When my sister at Stanford Med School actually brought up a nutritional information, she was told by an attending surgeon, don't be a pussy. That's what they told her. They said, you did not go to dietary nutrition school. You're here to be a surgeon. You're here to do serious medicine. That mindset, which is profitable because the interventions are what make money, the interventions are what need pharmaceuticals, that was embedded. And it's just to kind of close the story, it was embedded into law. So once John Rockefeller funded these initial med schools and created this kind of evidence-based medical kind of framework, he installed into law his lawyer, whose last name was Flexner, actually drafted the Flexner Report, which was passed by Congress in 1909, and it's essentially set what modern American medicine is. So modern medicine, the structure of how medicine in America is legally set up, is actually still under that 1909 law that Rockefeller wrote. And what it essentially did is it siloed diseases. And I would argue this has been the greatest mistake in medical history. So when we think about medicine today, 90% of costs, 90% of deaths are tied to chronic conditions. And the Flexner Report said we need to name the disease and we need to treat it. But that's a misnomer with chronic conditions. If you have, like my mom, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, potentially depression, infertility, other issues, that will be 5 different doctors, 5 different pills under the current system because that's profitable. We're able to name the disease, treat it with a pill, treat it with a potential intervention. It's a lifelong patient. The pills are recurring revenue. All those things I just mentioned are the same thing. If you actually do root cause metabolic interventions, eat better, think about your microbiome, exercise, sleep better, you can reverse every single condition I just stated. PCOS, which is skyrocketing, is the number 1 cause of infertility for women, is insulin resistance. It's not related to diabetes. It is diabetes, literally infertility. Now, Alzheimer's is called type 3 diabetes, that they're about to run a Pulitzer Prize, or the doctor's about to win potentially a Nobel Prize for that. It's a huge breakthrough of actually discovering what the root cause of Alzheimer's is. These are all related. 8 of the 10 leading causes of death in America are foodborne illnesses. But the structure, the legal structure, there's no funding for that. Doctors aren't reimbursed for that. It doesn't make the medical system money. What this has led to is a siloing of chronic conditions to where I believe it's over 10 prescriptions are written per American per year. So it's not just, these things will all happen by, they're not just random. And what it's led, and I'll just close with this, and I think Rockefeller couldn't have planned it better. The healthcare system, which he really pioneered, is now the largest industry in the country, most employed industry in the country, as we know, 20% of the economy, and the fastest growing. So you can't even wrap your head around this. The largest and fastest growing. Usually, and I do startups in tech and, all of our businesses, your businesses, innovation is lowering the price and creating better customer service, customer products. That's innovation. All these products and technology and consumer products, the price comes down, quality goes up. That's innovation. In medicine, the more we spend, the worse outcomes get. So it's this perfectly designed system. That a lot goes to some smart people really, truly rigging the system to delegitimize holistic views of medicine and put this siloed view. And that's my life journey, Kyle, really, is that we need to change from a siloed view of medicine where my sister graduates Stanford and chooses one of 42 specialties, one of 42 parts of the body to devote her entire life to where a patient comes unconscious with inflammation and she's not asking how that inflammation is related to that patient's migraines, that patient's diabetes, that patient's depression. She just cuts out the inflammation, sends them to the next doctor. That is what's broken in medicine. I'm engaging with a lot of public policymakers, and they're saying, we need to change page 200 of the Medicare Part D Supplemental Insurance Act. No, it's not about that. The problem is the actual system. Until we actually understand the incentives of the system, which is to silo disease and make as much money as possible as people stay sick for longer, until we attack that, we're going to continue to go bankrupt as a country and destroy our human capital.